The whispers of Manor Mirabel rain fell incessantly on the Manor Mirabel, as if the heavens themselves sought to cleanse the house of its murky history. The mansion, enshrouded in time and secrets, stood solitary atop a hill overlooking the village below, its walls a testament to tales whispered but never confirmed. Elizabeth, a woman of courage and scholarly pursuits, was intrigued by the lore surrounding the manor. It was said that every full moon the house came alive, its rooms echoing with ghostly cries and strange rituals. She acquired the keys to the manor, not for the faint thrill of ghost hunting, but to understand the truth that lay hidden. She entered the house on a night painted with silver luminescence. Immediately the cold gripped her, seeping into her very bones. Elizabeth's steps echoed in the great hall, distorted and transformed into distant weeping by the acoustics of the ancient building. The library was her first destination, a chamber of dark oak and dusty tomes. As she delved into old manuscripts, the room's temperature dropped further. Shadows danced and whispered, and she could feel eyes upon her. One particular book, bound in faded red leather, seemed to beckon her. It was the journal of Lord Alaric Mirabel, the original owner. As Elizabeth perused the journal, she learned of Alaric's obsession with immortality. He dabbled in dark arts and forbidden rituals, ultimately leading him to conduct a ceremony that would tether his soul to the manor. Yet it went awry, not granting him the eternal life he sought, but trapping countless souls, including his own, within the walls of the mansion. The diary ended with a chilling prophecy that another soul would be needed to break the curse. Realization hit Elizabeth. She was that soul. The rooms became a labyrinth of horror. Echoing laughter reverberated as portraits blinked, their occupants reaching out from their frames. The once magnificent ballroom was filled with ghostly dancers, forever trapped in their last waltz. In a dimly lit chamber, Elizabeth found herself face to face with Lord Alaric's apparition, his eyes empty, devoid of sanity, and filled with centuries of torment. "I sought eternity," he whispered, his voice raspy, "and became its prisoner. Release me." Elizabeth, combining her knowledge and intuition, realized the only way to free the souls was to complete the ritual Lord Alaric had failed to do so long ago. In the manor's very heart, she set up a circle of candles, placing the journal at its center. With whispered incantations, she beckoned the spirits of the mansion. One by one, they joined her, their forms swirling and combining into a maelstrom of energy. Hours felt like minutes, and the ritual's weight bore down on Elizabeth, testing her resolve. With one final heart-wrenching scream from Alaric, a blinding light consumed the room. Dawn broke, revealing a Manor Mirabel forever changed. Sunlight pierced through previously boarded windows, and the house, though still bearing its age, seemed alive in a different way, breathing and free. Elizabeth emerged not only as a scholar but as a savior. The once whispered tales of Manor Mirabel became stories of her bravery, echoing through time, a beacon of hope and proof of the indomitable human spirit. Heartbeats in the mist. The town of Black Hollow, seated between mountains that cast shadows even during the brightest day, was shrouded in an ever-present mist. It was said the fog wasn't just water, but the collective souls of the town's troubled past. Marina, a young journalist with fiery red hair and freckles, had heard the legends and was determined to chronicle them. She arrived during the fall equinox, a time when the mist was thickest and the whispers loudest. From the outset, it was clear that Black Hollow wasn't an ordinary town. There was an old church with a bell that tolled at unpredictable hours, and streets that seemed to loop back on themselves. Marina often found herself back where she started, even though she'd walked straight ahead. The locals, a peculiar lot, were wary of outsiders. Their eyes held stories of anguish and fear. Yet one elderly woman, Agatha, with striking blue eyes and hands that told of hard work, took pity on Marina, inviting her into her home. Over a pot of herbal tea, Agatha began her tale. "The mist," she started, her voice quivering, "is not what you think it is. Hundreds of years ago, Black Hollow was home to a cult that worshipped the mountains. Believing that sacrifices brought prosperity, they would offer the heart of a villager every equinox. However, one year, they chose a young woman, Lysandra, who was deeply loved by all. Her lover, a mere woodsman enraged by the choice, stormed the ritual grounds intent on saving her. Despite his valiant efforts, he was overpowered. The cultists in their fury took both their lives. Their love was so pure, so strong, that their spirits refused to move on. The mist that now blankets the town is their tears and unfulfilled desires, forever wandering, seeking solace. As years passed, the mist grew denser. The cult's activities ceased, but the darkness didn't. Every equinox, a shadowy figure roamed the streets, seeking a heart. Not as an offering to the mountains, but to replace its own, taken all those years ago. "The shadow seeks Lysandra," Agatha whispered, tears forming. "And every year it takes someone thinking it's her. It's trapped in an eternal cycle of grief and longing." Determined to break the cycle and free the town, Marina delved into the histories, looking for a solution. She discovered that Lysandra had a pendant, a family heirloom which she always wore. If she could find it and reunite it with the shadow, perhaps the spirits would find peace. The search wasn't easy. The pendant was hidden, protected by riddles and ensnared in dark magic. Along her journey, Marina felt the weight of countless eyes on her, heard whispers in the mist, and more than once felt a cold hand brush against hers. Finally, on the eve of the equinox, in the roots of the oldest tree, Marina found the pendant. It pulsed with energy, a heartbeat echoing the love of centuries past. That night, as the shadow emerged, Marina approached it, pendant in hand. She didn't see a monstrous figure, but a broken man lost in time. As she held out the pendant, the shadow hesitated, then reached out. The moment they touched, a blinding light enveloped Black Hollow. When it faded, so too had the mist. The next day, the sun shone brighter, the air was clearer, and the townsfolk looked lighter. They remembered nothing of the previous night, but a collective weight had been lifted. Marina, her mission complete, left Black Hollow with a story that would define her career. But more than that, she left with a heart full, having witnessed the power of undying love. Whispers of Fairwick. The town of Fairwick was like any other town, quiet and reclusive. What set it apart was the ornate ironclad library at its center. Almost paradoxical in its presence, this structure was far grander than any other building in the sleepy village. A recent arrival to Fairwick, Isabel was an ardent lover of books. Her heart would often overrule her reason, leading her to uncharted terrains in search of hidden literary treasures. The library's unique exterior beckoned her, and she felt a compulsion to explore its depths. Inside, she was greeted by shelves upon shelves of tomes, each looking older than the last. But one particular book caught her eye. Titled * Whispers of Fairwick *. It was bound in dark leather, its title engraved in gold. The edges of its pages were fringed with age, yet the words inside were immaculate. Isabel began to read, quickly realizing that the book was not just a tale, but a history of Fairwick itself. It chronicled the lives of its residents, from the founding fathers to the children playing in the streets at that very moment. Intrigued, she delved deeper, only to find her own name. Her breath hitched. The passage read, "Isabel, new to Fairwick, drawn by curiosity and fate. She will hear our whispers, our pleas. She will be the vessel." As she read, a chilling draft enveloped her. It felt as though hundreds of voices were whispering in her ear, recounting their lives, their joys, and their agonies. The weight of their emotions pressed on her, a mix of sadness, anger, and yearning. Suddenly, an old librarian approached her, his eyes brimming with urgency. "You shouldn't be reading that," he whispered, taking the book from her trembling hands. She asked about the book, but he merely shook his head, insisting it was best left alone. But Isabel was relentless. Eventually, he sighed and began to relay the story. Fairwick had once been the dwelling of a coven of witches. They had been protectors, using their magic for the betterment of all. But when a series of misfortunes struck the town, the residents, blinded by grief and suspicion, turned on the witches, accusing them of causing their woes. They were hunted and executed, their final screams echoing throughout Fairwick. Before her death, the head witch Alara cast a final spell, transferring the souls and memories of the coven into the very pages of the book. It was meant to be a way for them to live on, to find peace in being remembered. But something went wrong. The book became not a sanctuary, but a prison. As years passed, many had tried to release the spirits, but none had succeeded. And now, Isabel had unknowingly tethered herself to their plight. Realizing she was their last hope, Isabel, with the librarian's reluctant help, embarked on a perilous quest. Through long nights and haunted dreams, she sought to unravel the mystery, driven by the ever-present whispers urging her on. Each revelation was darker than the last. It wasn't just the witches' souls trapped in the book, but every soul that had ever read it. Their agony was a palpable force, leaving Isabel racked with pain. In the climax of her search, she discovered the heart of the curse. A tear shed by Alara, crystallized and hidden within the spine of the book. This tear held the weight of her grief, her love for her coven, and her fury at their betrayal. Isabel knew what had to be done. On a stormy night, she climbed to the highest point in Fairwick, holding the book aloft. With a plea to Alara, she shattered the crystallized tear, releasing a blinding light. The whispers grew to a crescendo, then faded, replaced by a haunting silence. Morning found Isabel at the base of the tower, the book beside her, its pages blank. The souls were free. Isabel departed Fairwick soon after, leaving behind the now harmless book. But the townspeople never forgot her. She had become part of their lore, the woman who silenced the whispers of Fairwick, whispers of Castle Cairn. In a secluded part of the Scottish Highlands stood an ancient castle, Castle Cairn. For centuries, the inhabitants of the neighboring village spoke in hushed tones about the eerie occurrences associated with it. A dense forest surrounded the castle, where mist floated year-round, and the cries of unknown creatures echoed through the night. The castle had been abandoned for as long as anyone could remember, but every few generations, an unsuspecting traveler or thrill-seeker would venture inside, never to return. Margot, a young and passionate historian, had heard these tales during her research on ancient European architecture. Skeptical of the supernatural and armed with her wit, determination, and a dusty old map, she decided to unveil the mysteries of Castle Cairn. Upon arriving, the castle's imposing stone walls and tall spires looked as if they were sculpted out of the very rocks and forests around them. The heavy wooden doors groaned in protest as Margot pushed them open. Inside, the atmosphere was damp, and a profound silence seemed to absorb all sound. Margot wandered through the grand halls, admiring the faded tapestries and ancient artifacts. It was in the vast library, amidst the decaying books and scrolls, that she found a leather-bound diary. Its pages told the tale of Lady Alara, the last known resident of Castle Cairn. As Margot delved deeper into Alara's writings, she uncovered a narrative of love, betrayal, and dark rituals. Alara had fallen in love with a stranger who had come to the village. As their love grew, so did the jealousy of the village's elders, who believed the stranger to be a warlock. One fateful night, under a blood-red moon, the elders, in their rage and prejudice, burned the stranger at the stake, right in front of Alara. Driven by grief and rage, Alara turned to the dark arts, her diary detailing rituals and incantations aimed at bringing her beloved back. However, each attempt came with ghastly consequences, further isolating her from the world. Margot's skepticism waned as she read about the castle's transformation, the forest encroaching its boundaries, and the emergence of creatures born out of Alara's misdirected magic. The final entry was a desperate plea, an incantation meant to imprison her soul with her beloveds in the castle, so they'd never be apart. Unbeknownst to Margot, as she murmured the words aloud, the atmosphere grew colder. Shadows danced on the walls, and a ghostly figure materialized. Lady Alara. Her ethereal beauty was tinged with sadness and madness. She mistook Margot for one of the villagers, her anger palpable. "I did it all for him," she wailed, her voice echoing through the chambers. "Why couldn't they let us be?" Margot, terrified yet sympathetic, tried to reason with Alara, explaining her purpose and the passage of time. But Alara's anguish had rendered her incapable of reason. She believed freeing her soul would reunite her with her beloved. A chilling wind blew through the library, extinguishing Margot's lantern. In the pitch black, she heard whispers of the past, the villagers' angry shouts, Alara's heart-wrenching cries, and an eerie lullaby that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Suddenly, a beam of moonlight illuminated a grand mirror. Within its frame, Margot saw not her reflection, but a terrifying realm of twisted forests and lost souls. Alara's voice beckoned her to step inside, to be trapped forever in this nightmarish world between life and death. Driven by a mix of fear and empathy, Margot remembered an old incantation she'd read about, one that might dispel malevolent spirits. She began chanting, her voice firm and clear. The castle seemed to protest, its walls shaking and the very ground trembling. As the final words left her lips, a blinding light consumed the library. When it faded, Margot found herself outside Castle Cairn, the first light of dawn painting the horizon. The castle, though still imposing, seemed less menacing. The village welcomed Margot as a hero, the first to return from the castle's depths. While she'd gone in search of history, she'd become a part of it. However, the experience left her with more questions than answers, and she often found herself staring at the castle from her window, wondering about the fine line between love and obsession, and the lengths grief can drive one to. Echoes of an unfinished melody. Amidst the blackened trees where the forest was densest, there stood a house abandoned for centuries. It was said that the ghosts of the past whispered through the broken window panes, and the wind carried the laments of lost souls. But for Alara, this forgotten place held the allure of a buried secret. A haunting melody heard only in the twilight hour had drawn her there. The journey was long. As she made her way through the thickets, every rustling leaf and cracking twig resonated within her, vibrating like a plucked string in the caverns of her soul. The night was dark, and the moon hung low, casting elongated shadows that danced and intertwined, reminding her of figures from an old ballroom waltzing into eternity. When she finally arrived, the house loomed overhead, with its once majestic facade now marred by time. It seemed to beckon her, urging her closer. She felt a mixture of trepidation and fascination. Every step she took towards the house echoed back to her, amplifying her heartbeat. It was as if the house and her heart were one, beating in tandem. She stepped inside and the air grew colder. The lingering scent of decaying wood and memories held her captive. The faded wallpaper told tales of yesteryears, and the cracked floorboards whispered secrets of the souls who once tread upon them. But it was the haunting melody that drew her further inside, leading her up the grand staircase to a door slightly ajar. Inside the room, a grand piano sat under a shattered chandelier, its keys stained by time and sorrow. Hesitantly, she approached and touched a key. A melancholic note filled the room, but it was not this that startled her. It was the shadowy figure behind her reflection in the piano's polished surface. A woman in an old ballroom gown, her eyes hollow but filled with an eternal sadness. Their eyes met and memories flooded Alara. Memories that weren't hers. The ballroom filled with dancers, laughter, and that same haunting melody played on the piano. But as the night wore on, a tragic event unfolded. A forbidden love, a duel, and 2 lives lost beneath that very chandelier. The ghostly woman was a trapped soul, bound to the house by her unfinished song. Drawn to the keys, Alara began to play. The notes flowed, painting the room with sorrow and love. As the last note resonated, a tear fell from the ghostly woman's eyes. With a smile of gratitude, she began to fade, leaving behind only the echo of the song and a feeling of bittersweet release. Alara left the house as dawn approached, the weight of the past heavy on her heart but with a sense of purpose. She realized that sometimes all a lost soul needed was for someone to hear their song. As the final echoes of terror fade away, we extend our sincerest gratitude to each and every one of you who embarked on this chilling journey with us. Your unwavering support and willingness to delve into the depths of darkness have made this series a truly unforgettable experience. We would like to express our deepest appreciation to the talented authors who crafted these haunting tales, weaving words into nightmares that kept you on the edge of your seat. Their creativity and dedication have brought these stories to life, igniting your imagination and filling your nights with spine-tingling suspense. But our journey does not end here. If you have enjoyed your time with us in this realm of horror, we invite you to join us on our channel Storyhaven. By subscribing, you will gain access to a wealth of captivating stories across various genres, from spine-chilling horror to heartwarming. Stay tuned, for our collection of stories continues to grow, promising to transport you to worlds both familiar and unknown, where imagination knows no bounds and the power of storytelling reigns supreme. We are humbled by the feedback and engagement we have received from our dedicated listeners. Your comments, messages, and shared experiences have fueled our passion to bring you even more enthralling content in the future. Join us on our social media platforms, where we can stay connected beyond the realms of storytelling. Let us continue to share our love for the art of storytelling and build a community. Once again, from the depths of our hearts, thank you for your unwavering support and for spending your valuable time with us. We bid you farewell until we meet again in the captivating world of Storyhaven. Remember, the power of a story lives on, waiting to be discovered and shared. Subscribe to Storyhaven and embark on countless new adventures that will forever leave an indelible mark on your soul.